Summer is coming, and along with that comes the camping season. And for Gina and I, that means a minimum of 2 weeks off-grid camping at one of our national parks. The challenge we have every year is keeping food cold and fresh. Well, that's where something like this ICECO fridge-freezer combination comes in. If you're interested in hearing more about it, keep watching. Now, before we get started, a few things I want to mention. First off, I want to thank ICECO for reaching out and offering to send me one of their refrigeration units so that I could share with you. Now, the other thing I want to mention is that this is actually going to be video one or part one of a two-part review of the ICECO freezer. The reason being is I've had this now for about 3 weeks, not quite a month, and I've been using it here at home. That's nowhere near the same as using it for 2 weeks off-grid camping, which I will be doing later this summer. So my thoughts is to start with a initial review, preview, and the testing that I've done so far with this unit, and then come back at the end of my 2-week camping trip and give you my thoughts at that point. All right, before we take a closer look at the freezer itself, I just want to talk about the whole issue of trying to keep food cold when you go camping, especially for anything more than maybe a couple of days. So for a long time, 20 plus years, Gina and I used a Coleman cooler. Now, we got along with it and it worked to a degree, but here was our experience using it. First off, we had to have a good sized Coleman cooler, or cooler, whatever brand you choose to use, so that we can put all the food that we wanted to keep fresh in it. Now, one thing we could not do is keep food frozen. We could start out with our food frozen when we left home, but it wasn't going to last very long. Now, in order to keep the at least fresh food from going bad, we had to use ice within the cooler, obviously. So ice comes with its own issues. Number one, where we camp in Kujbaquak National Park, in order to get bags of ice, we have to drive to the local small co-op grocery store. And that takes about 35 minutes in each direction. It's quite a ways out of the park and into the local village. Bags of ice sell there between, I think last year we were paying $4.50 a bag. And what we found is that we had to buy 2 bags of ice on average, depending on the ambient temperature. If it was nice and warm, which is what you hope it will be, 2 bags of ice will last about 1 day. Maybe you'll be left with some at the bottom of your cooler, but you still need to replenish it. That means that you're going out every other day at the least to get more and more ice. So it starts to add up. Now, not just the cost, so we're paying of $110 to $120 for a 2-week camping trip in ice alone. Not to add in the factor of spending the time driving out to that village shop to get the ice, plus the gas that we'd be spending on that as well. So it starts to add up. Now, if that was the only downsides to using ice in a cooler, you can probably justify it. But there are other issues, and if you've used a cooler for more than a couple of days, you know what I'm talking about. Ice melts, obviously, and it will start to pool water in the bottom of your fridge. So you learn from experience that you need to put things at the bottom of your fridge that you don't mind having get wet. Don't put your cheese at the bottom. If it's ever happened to you, you know what happens to the cheese. It's not good at all. So you need to keep your cheese at the top. Now, the other thing with using ice in a cooler, again, for more than a day or two, is that the cold is kind of stratified in layers. So it is at its coldest at the bottom. That's not bad. But when you get to the top of your cooler, things are a lot less cold. Now, you can do some things to keep your food colder longer, and we've done that. We've put blankets over top of the cooler. We even made a foam kind of a box to kind of lengthen or strengthen the insulation for it. But over time, if you're opening it, and of course you're opening it to get your food out, you're going to expose more and more of that cold to warm air, and it's going to exchange. And that's the whole process of using a cooler. The other issue is every other day you're taking the cooler from wherever you have it. We like to keep ours in the back seat of our vehicle just so the local wildlife doesn't find its way in, and they do. and they have, I should say, but we make sure that it stays where they can't get at it. Because you have to take it out in order to flip the drain plug and pour the water out onto the ground so that you can start fresh with some new ice and keep everything cold. It's quite a process. Now, we did that for a lot of years and we got by. Last year, we were given the opportunity by another company to test out their fridge-freezer combination. And, well, I'll let you search my playlist for that video. It's actually, again, it was a 2-video part so that I could give you the pre and the post of what we thought of it. And it was, I don't want to say a game changer, but pretty close to it. It did require that we use power stations to power it, because of course we are off-grid, and a solar panel to keep those power stations charged. And it worked. It worked for 2 weeks. There were a few days that we got down pretty low on the power stations themselves, and we had to drive a distance to find somewhere I could plug into an AC outlet in order to recharge the power station. But that only occurred once. Otherwise, the solar panel and the power stations were enough to power. Now, I mentioned that for a reason. The cooler that or the fridge that we were sent was an entry-level one. And it worked okay, and we had nothing to compare it to other than our Coleman cooler. So we didn't know just how good a fridge-freezer combination can be. Well, I'm here to tell you, even before we look at the ICECO, this is a completely different item altogether. The efficiency of this and the features that this one has, there's barely a comparison. So what I thought I would do at this point is just take a look at the fridge-freezer combination, show you all the features this has, give you the results of my testing to this point, and then we'll close the video out and wait for the 2-week camping trip. Now, I will be giving you some close-ups of the outside as well as the inside of the ICECO APL55 in a few moments' time. But I wanted to start out by sharing with you what came with the unit. So in addition to the fridge-freezer combination itself, there were a couple of things. Obviously, you're going to need an AC power cord for when you're using AC current. And what's good about this one is it is the standard type of an AC power cord that comes with most power stations, most laptops for that matter. So if for any reason you lost this, then they're very easily replaced. So that's good. Now, you also need a 12-volt power cord, and this one is a good size. It's quite long, which means that you should be able to place your fridge in your vehicle, whatever vehicle you're driving, and have enough length for this to reach the AC outlet in your vehicle. So, of course, that's very important. Now, along with that came a few other things. I found this kind of interesting. It actually came with an EnerGuide rating for it. Now, in this bag, there is a spare drain plug. Not likely to be an issue, but you never know, so it's nice that they included the spare drain plug. Now, they included a few other spare parts that I didn't think were going to be necessary, but again, you never know. Things like the bumper pads on the corner. I'll get into the features of the freezer in a moment. They gave us spare ones of those as well as clamps that hold the door closed. Again, more close-ups in a few moments' time. And last but not least is the manual itself. Very well detailed with all the information you need to know about the operation of this unit. Now, just before we talk about the key features for the APL55, I want to talk about why I chose this unit, because I was given a choice by ICECO. They said pick one off of their list, and they have quite a few different options that you can choose from. And this one was chosen because it had the same internal volume as the one we used last year. After a lot of consideration, we had chosen to go with one that was 55 liters in internal volume, or 58 quarts, any way you want to measure that. And it is what gave us near perfect volume for all of it we needed for 2 weeks of off-grid camping. Now, you may decide that you don't need that much internal volume. You may be able to get by with a little less, which is great. Sometimes I wish we could get by with a little less because they do take up a fair amount of room. I want to tell you now, when this unit arrived, I thought there was a mistake. I thought maybe they had sent us the wrong one, that they had sent us one much larger in volume. But it turns out this was the correct one. This is a 55-liter internal volume. What was different between this one and the one we used last year is that this is probably 1/4 to 1/3 again as large. And the reason for that is insulation. It's just that simple. This one has almost twice the thickness in the walls all the way around, adding insulation. And that showed up in my testing, as I'll mention in a few moments' time. So it is a big unit. There's no question about it. It is a good size unit. And my recommendation is to consider carefully what it is you think you need to keep cold or frozen so that you can choose the right size. And again, ICECO does have quite a few different choices that you can go through. All right, let's talk about a few of the key features for this unit. What makes this so special and different from a lot of the other ones on the market? To start with, this is a true dual zone fridge freezer, meaning that you can divide this into freezer on one side, refrigerator on the other side. There is actually a physical divider in the middle. If you remove that physical divider, and it is intended to be used that way, you can then turn this whole unit into either a fridge or a freezer. So it gives you some versatility. And when I mentioned that there are two inside areas, two divided areas, you get to choose which one is the fridge and which one is the freezer. There's a small difference in size, and you'll understand why when I show you the inside. So it is a true dual zone unit. You set the temperature separately for each side. That is something that I did not have on the other unit that I used. Now, this also comes with a German-made compressor from the company SECOP. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. It is quiet. In fact, when I turned the unit on, I waited for the compressor to start up, and I stood there and I could see the numbers going down. I actually had to get close enough to the unit to hear the compressor running. Is that important? Well, it depends on where you keep your unit. If you're keeping it inside your tent or your trailer, yeah, you want a quiet unit. You don't want something that's going to wake you up every time the compressor starts up. Very quiet. It comes with a 5-year warranty. Now, the rest of the unit comes with a 1-year parts and labor warranty for it as well. So we'll just put that out there now. So those are the major considerations for this. But now I think it's time to get into a few specifications. Then we'll do a walk around of the unit so I can show you all its features on the outside, and then I'll talk about my testing. Quickly, we're going to go through the physical specifications for the APL55, but of course this information will be in the video description for your reference. Now, to begin, unit weight, because that is a consideration without question. This comes in at about 55 pounds. It's not a lightweight unit. You want to make sure that you have 2 people to move this in and out of a vehicle, or at the very least, take the baskets, and I'll be showing you those in a minute, out so that you can move the unit, then put the baskets back in. So it is a bit heavy, but what you get for that weight is a stainless steel construction on the outside. By the way, this is the brushed stainless steel. There's also a blackened version if that's your preference. So you get heavy-duty stainless steel construction on the outside, and you get 2.5 inches thickness in walls in terms of insulation. So the weight is justified, and you'll hear that in the numbers I give you when I talk about my testing for it. Now, I'll give you the physical dimensions. So from the entire length comes in at 29.7 inches, so just short of 30 inches. The depth from front to back is 18.9, so just short of 19 inches. And the height is 19.3 from the table to the top of this unit. So it is a good sign. Like I said, it was larger than the one I used last year, but it has the same internal volume. All right, what I'm going to do now is bring the camera in, move around, show you all the build features on the outside and the features inside of this unit as well. All right, we're going to start with the end of the unit where the power goes in. So now here you can see the 110, 120 volt power cord plugged in to the unit, and right next to that is the DC import. Now, it is rated for both 12 volt and 24 volt DC input. So Gina and I will be using this with our vehicle and our power stations, which are 12 volt. But if you have an RV or another unit that has a 24 volt system, what's nice is that you can plug it in directly, so you can make use of that 24 volt DC without any adapters or any other piece of equipment that you need to attach to it. Now, on this side of the AC outlet is a pair of USB Type A output ports. So if you, in fact, aren't using this with a power station, which would, of course, have its own output ports, then you have a set of output ports that you can use for charging things like your cell phones, your tablets, your cameras, or whatever. So while we're at the bottom of the unit down here, let me share with you a couple of the more key features. These are the ventilation ports for the compressor, which does take up pretty much the entire bottom quarter of this unit here. And there are more ventilation covers on the sides of it. You'll see that when we come around. One of the nice things that ICECO talks about in their manual is the fact that this unit is very water resistant. Now, they don't refer to it as waterproof, but they do refer to it as water resistant. And what they say is that this can withstand a light rain. Just don't dump it or leave it in a pool of water, and it will be safe from the rain. So that's really a good feature to know about, because if we were to have this on our picnic table and were to leave the campsite for any length of time and it just happened to rain, and trust me, where we go camping, that can happen very suddenly and unexpectedly, it's good to know that the water will not get in and ruin the unit as well. Now, again, a couple more features that I'll show you down here at the bottom of the unit are these bumper pads. That's what I'm calling them. I don't know if they actually have a formal name. Now, these bumper pads are made of a high impact polyresin plastic type material, and they have some real key benefits. I wondered about them when I first saw them, but what they're intended to do is, if for any reason you were to bump this into something, drop it on the ground, rather than damage the unit itself, the impact would be absorbed by these units, and unless it's a real hard impact, these will withstand and absorb the shock without any damage to the unit. If it's a hard enough hit, these can break, of course, but that's why ICECO sent out a couple of spares to go along with it. So these exist on all four of the bottom corners as well as all four of the top corners. Now, I'm going to be showing you closer the control panels and everything up here at the top, but while we're talking about the bumpers up here on the corner, a nice little added feature is this little pass-through here. So what this pass-through does, and you'll get another close-up of it in a moment, is allows you to use a long shackle padlock to keep the unit secure. Keep the kids out, keep the animals out, although the latches on this I think will do a good job all by themselves, or keep anybody else out. So that's great. In fact, you could pass a cable and a padlock together and attach this to something immovable so that people could not walk away with this, of course. Now, a few more features as we move up from the bottom. There's the panel, as you would expect, with all the technical information on it. The handles themselves are made of cast aluminum, and they're spring-loaded. I mean, that's quite a heavy spring. So when they're not in use, they flatten themselves down against the unit. That's great for storage or finding a place in your vehicle to have this so that you can maximize the room that you have by having these down. And that's the same for these latches. These are something incredible. These are a very heavy-duty cast aluminum latch to keep the unit shut. As you can hear, when I lock them down, they snap on with authority. ICECO actually sent a pair of these as well, in case for whatever reason these became damaged. I'm not sure how that could happen, but you never know. So it's a nice feature that they actually sent the extras. Now, I'm going to reposition the camera so I can show you the control panel, talk about it just in brief, then I'll be able to show you the inside of the unit. All right, let's start by turning the power on to the APL55, and we're going to go through a few of the features of this unit, but all the information I have will be in the manual for your reference, so you don't have to try and memorize the operation of it from what I'm showing you here now. So what you can see is the unit display showing you 15 degrees. By the way, I have it set up for centigrade or Celsius because that's what we use here in Canada, but it comes standard with Fahrenheit, and you can decide to change to which method of measuring temperature you want to use. So right now, one side of the unit is reading 15 degrees. That's not the set temperature. That's actually what's inside the unit. And the other side is set at 13. Now, you have 16 levels of brightness for the unit. In fact, when the unit comes, it's set for its highest level of brightness. So if you don't need it, you can turn it down. So if you're in a RV or something, you don't like the bright blue light showing off from there, then you can turn it down to whatever level you want to, of course. Now, right over here, you can see there's what looks like a snowflake. This is the indicator for turning on either max, cold, or eco. So max cold is great for bringing it down to temperature as quickly as possible. But after that, unless you really need to run it at max because the temperatures outside are so high, you're going to let it run at eco. And all you need to do is just press the button and it'll switch. As you can see now, it turned blue and it's reading max in very, very small print. I press it again, it'll turn over to eco. Now you may be able to hear, if I stop talking, and if you listen closely, you may be able to hear the compressor running. And this is the loudest you'll ever hear that compressor as it's trying to bring the temperature down to whatever the set point you have for it. Now, in order to run through the menu features, you're using the setting button, a very common icon for that. And running through, it'll start with the fridge or freezer side, whichever side I have. You can see I have it set for 3 degrees Celsius, so that would be my fridge side. And then you would press it again, and you would press it again, and it comes over. Now, I was using this as a fridge on both sides, but if I want to change that and make it colder, I do so by using the plus or minus button. So once again, let's bring that back up, and I'll start lowering the temperature. So we're just below freezing. That's not 0 degrees Fahrenheit, that was 0 degrees Celsius. And I'm going to run it down to minus 4 degrees Celsius. And that'll keep things plenty cold and frozen for as long as you need to be. You can run it down a lot lower if you need to, but you shouldn't have to do that as well. Now, this center button here is for a light that is built into the unit right along here. And, well, I'll demonstrate it. Some people will like it, some people won't. It depends if you see a use for this. So when you turn that on, you get a white glowing light. Now, this can be great if you're at a picnic table. You need to see what it is you're taking in and out of your freezer. It also has the feature of this. They call it a breathing light. It'll go from blue to white and back again. Now, some people might like that personally, and there you can see it changing color now. If I need the light, I'll probably end up using it just at the plain white, but I can turn it off and you don't have to use that at all. So those are some of the key features. Now, keen-eyed people will notice that on the display, there is a Bluetooth symbol. And yes, there is a Bluetooth app that you can use on your Apple or Android product and control this unit and actually set the temperature upwards or downwards. Now, I thought that would be a really useful feature, and it is, so that you don't have to approach the unit to make those changes. The one thing that I've discovered about it is it only works within Bluetooth range. Now, around a campsite, that's fine. But if I were to leave this unit and go to the beach, which is, a few kilometers away, and I wanted to check the status and make sure that it's running properly, Bluetooth isn't going to extend that far. So it's not a Wi-Fi unit, it is just Bluetooth. It is handy, but you use it, you may not use it at all. All right, now I'll reposition the camera and I'll show you the inside of the unit. All right, let's take a look inside of the APL55. Undo the clasps, lift the lid open. Now, first thing I want to mention is the lid itself. So it stands open just past 90 degrees, so it won't slam down on your fingers. But this is a consideration if you're looking at purchasing one of these units, as this one is an end opening, not a side opening. It doesn't open in this direction. What you have to consider is where you're going to keep this if it's inside of your vehicle. Do you have enough clearance for the refrigerator and the lid when it's open in order to keep the lid open? This is going to be a bit of a challenge for us in our vehicle. Now, if you're in the back of an RV or a truck bed or something like that, then that may be a different issue. But this will be a little bit challenging. Again, it's pretty much identical to what we used on the one that we had last summer. So I'm used to using it and knowing how to use it. But this has the additional benefit of this feature right here. If for whatever reason you failed to support the unit open and you let it go, There's a pneumatic closing on this, so it's going to come down and close, but it won't drop on your fingers or break little fingers that are climbing inside when they shouldn't be. So really great feature that is. It was actually kind of surprised me, but it's just an extra nice thing to have. Now, I'll show you the inside of the refrigeration unit, and then we'll move around again to the outside. So first, another thing you'll notice is that there are interior lights so that you can see what's down inside each of the compartments. And what comes in these compartments are 4 baskets. The other unit we only had 1 basket, whole thing, 1 basket. And that meant that if you had a lot of items and they were stacked on top of themselves inside of that basket, you had to either reach down inside or take the whole basket out in order to get to the items on the bottom. Here you can do a bit more organization. There is the largest basket sitting open. I'll just take a couple of these out so that you can see. There are 2 in this end of the unit. Actually, there are even 2 more baskets. Boy, that's getting cold down there already, and it's only been about a minute, maybe less. And there are all 4 baskets coming out. By the way, this unit is known for how fast it will actually get cold. I've seen this come down to temperature from whatever the room or ambient temperature is to the set temperature in 15 to 20 minutes. Now, that doesn't mean it will freeze things that fast. It takes a while to get them frozen. We'll talk more about that in a few moments' time. But it will come down to internal temperature very, very quickly. Now, what you're looking at here is the panel divider between the refrigeration and freezer side. So once again, I can show you, or you can set this for a freezer on this side, refrigeration on this side, and it's approximately 1/3, 2/3. It's not completely equal that way because, of course, this area here is taken up by the compressor on the inside. If you want to switch it, the whole thing, to either fridge or freezer, you just simply remove the panel. And there are sensors in the panel and in the wall which will tell the unit that you have removed it and asks you now what temperature do you want to set the whole unit to. So that is a nice feature. Now, while I have that panel removed, you should be able to see down inside. There's the drain plug down inside. I can't foresee using this a lot unless for whatever reason we spilled something or something did defrost for an unknown reason, and you had some fluid down on the bottom. This is a big unit. It's not something you're going to tip over easily, so the drain plug is a great feature. Also a great time for you to be able to see just how thick the walls on this unit are. So a lot of insulation in those as well. Now let me put the panel back, and you have to line up the slots in the panels with the ribs on the side. Helps if I can see all the way down. There we go. And now the unit automatically returns to being dual zone fridge and freezer, whatever way you have it set up. All right, I'm going to close the lid. I want to take you around to the other end of the unit and just show you a few more features. And the last of the external features I want to show you on this end of the unit start with these hinges. They're heavy-duty cast aluminum hinges, and as you saw, they're pneumatically operated, so they will close down slowly and not drop on fingers unexpectedly. The other thing about this lid that I haven't mentioned is that it has sensors in it that will tell you whether or not the fridge is completely closed, so they will send you, not alarm codes so much as, but error codes on the display, and you can take a look. So the lid is a smart lid in that sense, and that's a nice feature to have as well. Again, the spring-loaded aluminum handle on this end, but what also appears on this end is a couple of more ports. So what we have down here are the another DC input port and another set of USB Type A output ports. So why 2 sets of input ports, one on either end? Well, this entire space is intended for use with an accessory that ICECO sells, which is a small power bank which will magnetically attach to the unit here, and then you can run their power into the unit here so that you don't have to rely on an external power bank or running it to your vehicle if you don't want to. Now, the nice thing about that, as well as having options of using that power station, is that Depending on the setup of where you're using this inside of your vehicle, it may be more convenient to run the power cord in for 12 volt or 24 volt DC. It may be more convenient to run it into this end of the unit and not the other end of the unit. And that may be the case, especially if you have this attached on a slider, again, another accessory that ICECO sells, that you can put in the bed of your truck or your RV or your SUV or whatever it is you're carrying this in. Allows you to pull the whole unit out to get access to it. It'd be nicer if the power input was on the back end of that and not on the front end of that. So a great feature, well thought out addition as well. Okay, I want to give you the experience of the testing I did with the ICECO APL55 here at home. And I will be giving you my experiences using it after my 2-week camping trip in the heat of the summer off-grid. But I think it's fair to get a baseline of comparison of which I can base my expectations on at that time. So to set the backdrop for this, we used it in one of the rooms in our house, which was set to 62 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 17 degrees Celsius. Inside, we placed a number of water jugs, and we put some of them in the fridge and some of them in the freezer. So it took up about half of the capacity. So it was only about half full. Now, before I hooked it up to my power station, I'm ensured that everything was brought down to whatever the temperature is. And I did that using AC current. The reason I tell you that now is because one of the things you'll know from experience is don't put everything in this unit unless they are already frozen or already down to temperature, because it takes a bit of time for those things to come down to the freezing point if you're depending on this at home. It's no different than your fridge or freezer at home. So the experience thing is before you travel with this unit, have everything already at the temperature you want it to be from your home fridge or your home freezer. Then put it in, and it will come down to temperature and stay there with much less energy draw and much quicker time, of course. So what I did at that point is that I hooked it up to one of my power stations, which in this case was the Bluetti AC70, which has 768 watt-hours of capacity. Now, the importance of that, of course, is you want to get an idea, if you do plan on using this with a power station off-grid without AC or your vehicle's DC, you want to know how long your power station is going to last before you have to recharge it or you have to sub it out for another unit. That lasted for 60 hours. It was actually quite surprising. It's almost double what the other unit I had used last year would last. So 60 hours of capacity off of that, or 60 hours of runtime off of that capacity of battery. At that point, I unplugged the units, so it had no power going to it, and I had two remote temperature gauge or thermometer set inside, one inside the freezer, one inside of the refrigerator, and I let them run for 12 hours. I could have let this test run longer, but I figured 12 hours would give me a good indication of how long it would keep things cold. So again, with the starting temperature of the fridge at 3 degrees Celsius, after 12 hours, it went up to 6 degrees Celsius. So still cold enough to keep things from going bad in the refrigeration unit. In the freezer portion, I started off at -4 degrees Celsius, and it never rose above the freezing mark, 0 degrees Celsius. Now, I would be interested to know if I had left it longer, how long it would take before things rose above the freezing, but the confidence factor is that everything that was frozen after 12 hours of not being plugged in remained frozen. Now, I qualify that by saying it wasn't all that cold, right? 17 degrees Celsius in the room isn't especially cold, so you can't expect that type of performance in the heat of the summer. But it is a good starting point from which to compare what you will get at that point. All right, let's close this video out. Now, when closing this video out, I just want to talk for a moment about the investment you're going to have to make if you want one of these ICECO APL55 fridge freezer units. Because let's face it, this is rather expensive. This is not a budget unit. But what you get for your money, what you get for your investment in this are things that I have not seen on other units. To start with, this has the true dual zone technology. You actually get a true fridge and freezer, and you can set which side it will be for fridge or freezer. You get to remove that central divider and turn the whole unit into a fridge or freezer. Those, again, are features I have just not seen on other units available. The quality of this build is just second to none. It just speaks quality all over. And in fact, when you include that German-made SECOP compressor with the 5-year warranty, you know that this unit is going to be around for a while and operating and returning on your investment for you. But what I haven't talked too much about are some of the alternatives for you. So I did talk in the opening of this video about our experiences using ice to keep our food cold while we go camping at the national park. The cooler that we used was a good size Coleman cooler. I think that's pretty much average what a lot of people use. They range in price depending on the quality that you want in it, the size you get, somewhere between $50 and $100 Canadian. So much cheaper than one of these without question. Again, you can look at whether or not it's worth your time and effort and money to get the ice that you have to put in on a regular basis. But before doing this video, I wanted to look at a high quality cooler, what you can get for your money that would keep things a lot colder. And the one that immediately comes to mind and the one I priced out was the Yeti. So Yeti has a line of coolers, not fridge freezers, just coolers. You have to supply the cold in the form of ice. And what I found is for something that had the same internal capacity that this had, although a little bit smaller in physical dimensions, came in at $500 Canadian. That's approaching the price of this one. Now, yes, this is still more money yet, but what you get, of course, is all the things that the fridge freezer provides for you that you don't get with regardless of how good a cooler you do buy. So I just wanted to put that out there. You do have to take into consideration whether or not the features you get is going to be worth the investment to you. Again, it's not inexpensive, but for those of you who have the budget, it is worth looking at. And if you are interested in taking another look at one of these fridge freezer units from ICECO, I'll be putting the links in the video description. They have a range of smaller ones and even larger ones, depending on what your needs are, of course. But if you have any comments or questions, put those in the comments section. But until next time, get out and explore and take that path less traveled, because it will make all the difference. Bye for now.